All right, we are on. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of the OoruLabs podcast, the soapbox for urban sustainability. I'm Satya Shankaran, and with me is Neerav Kodolikar. So, the two of us over the last few weeks have been thinking about the future of bicycle sharing systems because we've been doing the work around the last mile connectivity and things like that. And we decided to talk to someone who's actually doing it, right? So Arjit Soni is here. He runs one of the few bicycle sharing systems in the country. Welcome, Arjit, to the podcast.
Hey, hi Satya, morning. Hi Neerav. Thank you so much for having me here.
And he is here to answer this question that me and Neerav wanted to ask everyone and try to answer as well. Will bicycle sharing systems work in India? What do you think, Arjit?
So, it's a pretty broad question. I certainly believe that public bicycle sharing has a great future in this country. I just wish that we had more players in this space and not pivoted to scooters just because they couldn't get it right the first time.
So am for once somebody is saying I don't like being a monopoly, but not monopoly. There are a few, but not as many as you would like you said. But what do you think is going on? So let's tackle the question of: do you really think people in India want to cycle? I've heard many things. It's an aspirational economy. We are gaining more wealth, and we want to buy more expensive vehicles for ourselves. If that is the prevailing attitude, why would somebody want to pick up a bicycle, shared or
Uh,
otherwise?
Purely because convenience sells, and a bicycle is a more convenient alternative than a private vehicle or a private scooter. And while in cities like Bangalore and Mumbai, it's pretty established that public transport is more convenient than a private vehicle. Other cities will sooner or later realize this. So it's not about what you aspire to be. You may still aspire to buy a car and park it in your garage, but you won't be able to use it much, and you will have to switch to public transport for your as a primary means of commute, and for your first and last mile connectivity the bicycle will play an instrumental role. So as simple as that, it's more convenient. Yeah.
No, I do agree with you. I think larger the cities are increasingly getting congested, right? I mean, you've seen in many cities, you've been to these cities, you come around and meet people here. The cities are increasingly getting congested, and the solution is in trying to provide more choices of modes, right? Yesterday, I was speaking to someone about this mode choice thing. We don't seem to have this choice. So somebody wants to ride a bicycle, the choice of having access to the bicycle doesn't seem to exist for him. And but public bicycle sharing, for the viewers, I think we should just probably define bicycle sharing, right? It's a, you correct me if I'm wrong, you're the one who's running it, but if a person wants to have access to a bicycle quickly when he's getting out of a train or a bus or something like that, you are making it available just like an auto rickshaw on call. You are having it there so a person can pay for it, quickly rent it, and go do his job, and then basically have access to it. There are different models of bicycle sharing that are around, but one of them is the key underlying factor is for you to rent a bicycle quickly, right, and on the spot, and not
Yeah.
necessarily have to do that. Is that a good enough definition, Arjit, of bicycle sharing?
Yes, it is.
And how have you seen that system emerge over the years that you have been trying to do that? Has the model changed? Because we have heard of all of these people who have come and failed, right? What what uh, what are you trying to do differently?
So, Satya, since day one, and I also narrated the story on Shark Tank that, the idea that I got of my bike was through my own life struggle of getting a rickshaw to go from my hostel to Andheri, and similarly a cab from the other to my office. So the idea was originally to buy two bicycles, one to go from my hostel to Andheri and park it there, and the other to take from the other and go to office. And that idea stuck with me. So when I, being a chartered accountant, studied the other public bike share systems across the globe. This was way back in 2012-13 when you had the likes of City Bike and Barclays Cycle Hire. They were the predominant successful public bike shares. I was taken aback by the exorbitant pricing that these systems have even today. Like if you simply translate them simply straight away translate dollars to rupees, it wouldn't have worked. And because I'm a chartered accountant, luckily my education helped me there, because when I was doing the business modeling, I could find out that there's an inherent flaw in the operating model, because of which the operating model is becoming complex. You're creating more number of stations, and as a result, your fixed costs are increasing. Your asset utilization is getting poor, and as a result, the service is becoming exorbitantly expensive. So the fundamental difference that my bike has adopted, the fundamental difference in our approach compared to all other public bike shares across the globe is we have not implemented it on a pay per ride model. We give that option to the user, but we have always focused on a subscription based public bike share model. Now, how does this become better for the user and both for the operator? The moment you sell or you rent a bicycle on a daily, weekly, or monthly unlimited subscriptions, you eliminate the need to create a station near the user's point of origin and user's point of destination. So if I were to come to Bangalore tomorrow and set my shop, I just have to create presence across the entire Namma metro corridor. That would be about 50 odd stations. I could be wrong. I don't have the latest numbers.
Yeah, I don't know
And
about that. Yeah.
I can straight away start in Bangalore with a minimal investment of 50 stations and say 10 bikes a station. And as the user base keeps on growing, I can keep augmenting and adding more and more cycles to the fleet. What other players did and where they failed is they copied the Chinese dockless bike share model, and because my bike was bootstrapped, we were not under the influence of venture money to grow our top line and grow some statistics. We followed what is right for the consumer and right for the business. But because these players got misled by chasing the statistics of number of trips per bike, and as a result, they try to create this complex system, a cluster-based approach where you create multiple stations across the city and you try to generate more trips per bike. What happened as a result is you created more number of stations, your business got more complex, you had more stations to make your inventory available. Then the worst thing they did was they initially didn't implement geofencing. So they let the users drop and pick the bike anywhere in the city. Now, theoretically, it sounds very convenient. Like if I'm a user, I can bring the bike all the way to my office. But let's look at the journey of the next user. He still has to walk to the bike. So you're again creating a first and last mile problem while trying to solve the first and last mile problem. And then the previous user would have parked it in his basement, or he would have taken it in his lift and parked it at his floor. So while the app would show that the bicycle is there, you can't access it, right? So that leads to a bad user experience. Then luckily, some of the players learned that they have to implement geofencing even though the technology is dockless. But then while they created these zones, they didn't invest in creating a physical identity for these zones. So they didn't put in a physical marker or a physical station which tells the user that this is where I'm supposed to park the bicycle. What that led to is users were left guessing that, okay, I'm supposed to park on this side of the road or this side of the road. Let me try with the app. Oh, the app has accepted my request. So now you have the stand here, but the cycle is parked here. And you are inviting vandalism. You are inviting user to not care for your asset. And once the assets get vandalized, once you're passing by the road and you see that the cycle has fallen on day one, then you see it fallen on day two and day three, and you realize, hey, nobody really cares about this, right? And that is what has led to the failure of public bike share. If I can answer, I mean, this
No,
is
fair enough. No, fair enough. I think there are lots of gaps in the true public bike share model in which you said the assets will be truly in the public domain. What you have found, if I understand rightly, is an in between, which is a rental on a subscription, which is not, it is public to the nature of interchange. At the point you're creating an interchange point where you're saying, you don't own this bike, you own subscription to a bike service, which allows you to leave this bike and take another one from me and kind of mimic the public bicycle sharing without the problems on the other end, right? So you kind of adapted it to say last mile with public transport. But theoretically, like you said, it is possible that this can be truly public owned and not, but it requires a lot of maturity and it requires a lot of volumes as well, right? If you need to sweat this asset, if you need to sweat it. You don't necessarily need to. If you're getting the money that is required from the user, there is no need for you to sweat that asset if the person is owning it. As long as it is in the, you need to sweat it as long as it is in the stations, right? So you can't leave it idle there. But if it's idle in the hands of the person, he's anyway paying for it. If you're assured of that payment,
Yes.
you don't have to worry. That's your nice thing. That's a very good model. I feel that's a kind of between a rental and a PBS. You've struck a nice balance,
Not only that,
right?
Satya, I'll just add here. Sorry to interrupt you. Look at the end
No, no,
user
no.
convenience. He's getting connectivity right from his home, right? And all he has to do is make a choice. If it's a short commute, he can go directly to his endpoint without the need to go to a station. But
Fair
if it's
enough.
a long commute, you can go to the nearest public transit, swap the bike with another one where he gets down, and ride it to his destination. So it's also better for the end user. It's also better for the asset life, and it's also better for the operator.
I know there's a lot of complexity solved because the person is keeping it in his door, inside his gate, and that is true zero last mile because it's inside his gate, which is anyway where you said some of these people take it. So there's a nice balance that is there. But let's come back to saying that if this is okay, yeah, go ahead.
Can the user actually take the bikes, let's just say inside the gate and have it with them overnight? And a particular bike?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
It's his personal bike. He can ride it like he owns it.
Yeah. Because actually, Ajay, this would be interesting for you to note, and the viewers watching this, is my undergrad thesis was actually in evaluating how public bicycle systems are implemented in Bangalore, looking at one particular provider that was dominant then, and what are the barriers to implementing public bicycle sharing. So, speaking on the different models that you just touched upon, one key factor was, as you mentioned, the complexity of actually maintaining a dockless system. But when I was actually evaluating all of these different models, then I don't think there was a provider that had a subscription-based service.
No,
then.
it wasn't there.
And yeah, so hence that was something that I just left, but it was noted in my thesis that it is also a possibility. It has been implemented. I think somewhere in the States, one particular county in the United States had implemented a subscription-based service. But that also was just a pilot with a dozen or so bikes, not at the scale of
The biggest
bikes. Yeah.
The biggest lacuna of a subscription-based model is it's more capital intensive. So you're practically blocking one asset per user. One of the parallels that we can draw is a brand called Swapfeets based out of Netherlands. They also are a bicycle subscription company.
Right.
They have more or less a similar model that we are professing here. Yeah.
Got it. But another question that I'd like to ask you in terms of, taking an aside from the business model per se, how do you tackle the give us the infrastructure first mindset, then we'll cycle? Because that is something that I guess you need to take care of as an operator or tackle as an operator. So how are you navigating this?
So, I've closely observed this classic chicken and egg problem. And if I take example of Ahmedabad, we had cycle lanes here when the BRTS came up maybe 10, 15 years back. And these lanes got encroached upon because there was no PBS around that. So, we have to be very careful when we demand for infrastructure, because if we demand for infrastructure and if we get it and if it doesn't get utilized, it gets encroached upon, and it creates a impression that infrastructure just doesn't work, right? So understanding and observing this, I realized that in trying to solve this problem, I have to start with the PBS first, because unless and until you make bicycles available and accessible to the user, and then the next step should be infrastructure. So you need to bring some critical mass behind you to attract and get the confidence of the authorities to invest in a dedicated cycling infra to attract more people. So that's how I have looked at things. But then the problem is, for a city like Ahmedabad, this strategy would have worked. But when I look at applying this strategy in Bangalore, maybe it won't, because it is so heavily congested. Ahmedabad still, at least the western part of the Ahmedabad, still has very wide roads. The city is relatively cyclable, if you ask me. I don't find any issues. But in a city like Bangalore, there's no road space left, right? So there actually the infrastructure has become a prerequisite to get some traction when you launch a PBS there. Yeah.
Would you say that's the only factor, just the width of the road and the congestion? or is there anything else that you might have come across?
I mean, honestly, that's the primary thing that I can think of. As I said, yeah, it's not about users don't want to cycle. It's all about what is more convenient to them. Let's take another example. If you're living in Mumbai and if it's a weekday, would you prefer to go from Borivali to Churchgate in a car, or would you prefer public transport? You'd prefer public transport. But if it's a Sunday, you might think of taking your car, right? So the point is, as long as the roads are empty, people will prefer to take private vehicle because that will be the more convenient option. But as soon as the roads get choked, you will look at alternatives. So it's all about making your offering more convenient, more accessible. It's not about pricing. People spend much more than what they spend on public transport, right? It's all about focusing on convenience, making the multimodal mobility a seamless experience. As if we can keep focusing on that and keep trying hard at that again and again and again, eventually people will have to shift. People will come. No matter, they will continue to aspire about their cars, but they will have to adopt public transport.
Yeah. You can waste your money on a car and keep it, but you can use it for some other purpose. But in the city, I guess short mobility and the needs, if you can solve 50 to 60 to 80% of your trips that you do within your neighborhood using this, or use it as a last mile, I do think a great amount of congestion can be avoided. And I think you're absolutely right. How do you create conveniences now? Right. So one of the conveniences that you have focused on, or public bicycle sharing systems are efficiently focused on, is the last mile, because there is an assured main line which is carrying lots of people, and there is always traffic going into these trains and buses, and you're just giving them this and saying keep it in your house, use it to get to, maybe not this, if you don't have a bus stand nearby, you can go to this train station instead. Excuse me. So you're able to do that. Are there any other use cases you have seen? Because I have heard of people just using the shared bicycle as a exercise equipment for the morning. Is that a large portion of rides that is happening?
So when we started, certainly 90% of our trips were predominantly before the office hours and after the office hours. So we can say that health and leisure was the primary use case for public bike share when we launched, and that was expected. You can't expect people to straight away start cycling to work. The first step is to get them to cycling, and then you build upon that. But I'm very happy and gives me a lot of satisfaction to say that if I open my dashboard right now and I see the last 90 days trend, 60% trips are now happening between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. That signifies
Nice.
that the system is growing upon the consumer, and he's now looking at accepting it for commute purpose as well. What has helped achieve this? It's not that cycles were not existent before. It's the design of the bike itself. So I'm still surprised that none of the consumer bikes have ever really focused on increasing the utility of the bicycles by adding a basket, or that actually is one of the biggest reason why people use my bike for commute purpose, because we have that sturdy basket that can take up to 10 kgs of weight, and the basket sits on the frame, not on the handle. So irrespective of whatever load you put on it, you can easily maneuver it. No one has tried to understand that if I'm a user, if I'm carrying a laptop bag, will I be confident putting it back where I can't see it and waiting through the traffic, or would I be more assured and secured about it if it's in my front, right? So this one feature is one of the biggest feature which can enable a user to use cycle in many more use cases, right? I've seen videos of users putting the 10 liter Bisleri can in their basket and riding their way back and putting in stories. So yeah, it's growing upon it. It is health and leisure as a first step, but eventually it will grow, and people will transition to using it for commute as well.
I think this very interesting point you raised is that bicycles are still sold at the showroom without anything on them, right? With the seat on it. So if you put a bicycle with only a seat on it, people will only use it for carrying themselves around. If you want them to carry something else, you have to show them that it is possible to carry that. I've not seen, maybe a couple of times in a store, a full built bike with bags, with pannier racks, even the selling part, not just the PBS part. All PBS are at least having baskets on them. it's almost like if I put a basket on a bike, people are not going to buy it, right? So they sell the road bikes and other bikes in a different way. I think if you show them a fully built, it's like when you go and buy a scooter. Nobody, first thing they do is open and see how much carrying capacity it has, because in your mind it's first utility,
Yeah.
right? So I think we have to go a long way in trying to even display these things with these accessories so people get an idea of how this bicycle can be used. Your images of the Bisleri carrying thing, and it makes a powerful imagery that you can use this for everything other than just cycling around in the morning. And
Yeah.
that goes a long way, because people are also thinking, how do I use this? What do I use this for? You show somebody going into a metro station, you show someone parking and buying groceries and putting it over there. It's a powerful imagery, I think, that you caught on. I'll take this moment to plug our CFAM newsletter, because we cover a lot of these things in that. Please go to cfam.substack.com and subscribe to the newsletter. There was one out this week, which is focusing on, apart from many things, Pedal Chalet, which is being inaugurated on Sunday. So if you're listening to this, come to Pedal Chalet at Cubbon Park. It is the bicycle training program that is being launched by DULT, Directorate of Urban Land Transport, in association with many non-profits, including CFOS and Bangalore Bicycling School. This goes back to what Arjit was also saying, is that people need to start learning to get on a bicycle and confidently ride the streets. That's what Pedal Chalet is trying to achieve, is by telling people, just get on the bicycle and ride confidently on the streets that exist today. Yes, there is congestion, but that goes back to what we were talking, right? Congestion is a natural disincentive. If you try to not have too much of congestion, people think the roads are empty and they tend to clog them with more motor vehicles, right? That's the Javan's paradox we talk about. But at the same time, congestion can be, irritating for many people. People are honking at you. There's not enough elbow room. There's not enough space. So at the end of the day, you're exhausted cycling in congested traffic. We need to make the difference between being exhausted mentally a little bit. Not all of us. Some of us don't care about it, but some newbies might. But it is not unsafe. Let us make the distinction. Empty roads are unsafe because vehicles travel at fast speeds. When congestion is there, you are safer because you are going faster than the vehicles on the bicycle. I mean, you can squeeze through, you can just step out, squeeze through, you can use other pathways that are not existing, that the vehicles can't go through. So it is an advantage. People in congested cities should think of the bicycle as actually a way to beat congestion, and be safe on the roads, and not try to do this empty road. When the road is empty, you do feel safer. I mean, you feel not much hassles. Nobody's harassing you. But it's very dangerous because people might be traveling at a fast clip. I keep saying this in almost every other episode, but I think it is useful to note, because a lot of adoption in the cities will come in congested cities for cycling. And it cannot be called an unsafe city. But coming back to this, before we get into the business model, you are working in what now, 6, 7 cities now, at least?
We are there in 6, and hopefully we are launching Mysuru next month, so 7.
So that will make that 7. Do you see any difference in the way these cities have responded to PBS? It could be people, it could be government. How have they responded? Where is the adoption more? Where is it less? Who's driving this change? Is it the people or is it the government? I mean, you can compare between two different, yeah.
So surprisingly, we have had more or less a very similar response in all the cities that we have been. But one city that has really surprised us is Indore. It's growing very fast, and it's gobbling cycles like anything. I mean, we started with about 100 bicycles last year, and today we are at 1,500 bicycles, and we are adding 50 to 100 bicycles every month. So we are surprised at the pace at which that city is, adopting public bike share. And I mean, the reasons. I mean, what I feel is one of the reasons that is working in our favor is that it's a tier 2 city. So the bicycle can be looked as a complete vehicle in itself, where you can do an end-to-end commute of 4 to 5 kilometers. It's the cleanest city of this country, so that has certainly helped, because when the roads are clean, where they're not full of dirt or filth, you don't mind riding a bicycle. You're not your clothes are not getting soiled. So that is another reason. But the third most important reason is that the city gave us capital subsidy. And because of that, we were able to price our product very cheaply. So right now, a PBS bike costs twice as expensive as a normal bicycle because you have to invest in the IoT. Because of the capital subsidy, we were able to price it so that when a user is equating whether I should buy or rent, clearly rent wins. The pricing was that attractive. As a result, and with a lot of brilliant PR around the entire PBS, again, thanks to the authorities, they had a brilliant PR machinery working for them. The user was educated to the minutest detail that this is how you're going to get a bicycle, this is how it unlocks, these are the various pricing options, this is the deposit, this is refundable, and repeatedly, again and again and again and again. A combination of all these factors has led to Indore really growing very fast for us as a city. So Indore really shines out. We have had good success in Ahmedabad. Kochi is really picking up now. It took us a year to figure that city out. It rains a lot there, but people are really adopting my bike now, and it's growing, especially to use to. So in Kochi, you have this Fort Kochi area. That is where a lot of tourists are adopting my bike. And then we have the stations along the metro corridor where people are using it for first and last mile. So these are the two use cases that we're seeing there. One city where I feel we could do better and it's not really picking up as quickly as we thought is the Mumbai metro. Probably one reason being that, again, the metro is an incomplete network. It's just line 2 and 7, which is like hardly 20% of the entire Mumbai area. So probably when the metro network is complete, that's when mass adoption will come up. So more or less similar experience in all the cities, Satya. Yeah.
Do you think the local train system in Mumbai has an opportunity, or it's a different crowd that might not?
Oh, it's a big opportunity. It's a big opportunity, but sadly, their policies don't allow for PBS. So that's one of the biggest pain points, working with different authorities. It's a legacy organization, the Indian Railways. So it's very difficult to get policies out which are completely radically different from what they've done in the past. Yeah. It's easier to work with modern age authorities like Metro and smart cities. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So that brings me to this whole. So before we get into the government side of things and understand what it is, let's go back to the business model. When 2017 happened, the OFO mobile craze, where all the Chinese vehicles were dumped in mass graves, that got a lot of public attention. But nobody will talk about the fact that they think that the bicycle sharing has disappeared after that. Nobody does bicycle sharing anymore. Everything went into the grave and there's no more bicycle sharing in the world anymore. But interestingly, there is still, just found out last week, I think I shared it with you as well, was there are at least 3 companies which are operating in almost 100 cities. They're having thousands of rides every day. So there is a noisy way to ruin this thing and there is a softer way to make it successful. In your opinion, why do you think those big guys failed? I'm not asking if the public bicycle sharing model failed. Those big guys who cost a lot of, who came in with these big things, only they failed. It's like saying the .com bubble didn't kill the internet. It only killed a few people who were, misbehaving, maybe, if you call it that.
I mean, I've given it a thought a lot of times, and the only reason that I can find out is because these guys raised a lot of venture money very quickly. They were under pressure to grow. And bike share is a tech game, but before tech, it's an ops game. So you really need to get your ops right in one city, make it clinical, and then you should look to expand to other cities. What these guys did was they started expanding into multiple cities because they had raised money very quickly. And the operations problem then compounded because you don't have to solve the problem for just one city, you have to then solve it for all the cities. And while you're trying to solve this problem, you're continuing to grow. So the problem is compounding as you're trying to solve. And that's one of the reasons that all these guys, I mean, OFO at its peak raised about $700 billion. So did Mobike. And in fact, this is what Piyush asked me. Sadly, it was edited out. But Piyush came with this strong perception that shared mobility, has failed. Mobike and Ofo, we have many examples, including Indian examples. And I told him, but that's exactly what we have solved at My Bike. Because we were bootstrapped for the first 7 years, I, as a founder, could go deep into the minutest of problems and solve this problem. And now I'm here looking to scale because operations is the least of my worries. So this is primarily why these guys failed.
So the operation cost coming down is definitely a big bargain, right? I mean, you transferred the ownership. Of course, that also means you can't sweat the asset as much as somebody else would. Would that be, like you said, it's tied in the hands of the user while he or she is having it in her house and in their house and it's not being used. Has that brought down your ability to earn more? Is it marginally more or is it substantially more if you could release that bicycle more often?
So, Satya, when you do a paper ride model, maybe you are able to do 2x of the revenue per bike that I'm generating, but then your expenses are maybe 4x. So, for me, being a
It's a
bootstrap
compromise.
organization, I had to focus at bottom line, not at top line. So,
No, but for anybody also, right? For anybody
Yeah.
now, I think bottom line is a big thing, right? So that's where I'm going with this question is that okay? Answer it with the bottom line in mind because everybody needs to be profitable now. Why did I ask that question? Was they were not, right? It's not that they didn't have the ability to invest in ops and burn more and scale faster, because if you put rocket fuel, it needs to go to the moon. You can't put rocket fuel and it rides on the road like a bicycle, right? So are you looking to see that will rocket fuel help, or is there a bottom line positive way of running? Is there unit profitability in bicycle sharing services? Have you cracked that part in your opinion?
So Satya, right now I can confidently say that we are achieving a 4 years payback on our assets, on our bicycles. I am talking at a city level
That's
profitability.
nice.
At a company level, we are EBITDA neutral. But let me talk at a city level profitability, because at a company level, if we scale, then this overheads would be only a fraction of the overall costs of the operations.
Correct.
But at a city level profitability, the revenue minus the expenses, we are able to pay back for our assets in 4 years, which honestly is not that great. We wish to bring it down to somewhere around 36 months. But if we really want to attract venture capitalists, then we'll have to bring that asset down to that payback down to 24 months. That would mean that the end user pricing would become quite expensive. And that is where we feel that yes, a government assistance in terms of it could be purely capital financing. So the government owning the asset and we becoming an operating partner. I think if that kind of a model can be achieved, then this is certainly a sustainable and scalable business model, financially as well.
Because that's because operationally you can be profitable. It's just the capex that is going to kill the whole thing. But let's ask that question again, right? What is the incentive for the government to own bicycles? They, in fact, right now they want to own trains. Okay, they want to buy trains, put trains. They want to buy buses. I think that also is a big deal. They are not buying enough buses. But why would they want to? The minute I say the government should buy cycles, half the people in India are going, why should they be in the cycle business? What would your answer be?
Firstly, Satya, like you, I am equally surprised that when you have a PPP model where the government is investing in the capex and the operators are not even taking revenue risk, they are getting paid with fixed, operating service charges and just need to maintain the SLAs. Here we have public bike share operators who are investing in the capex, who are investing in the OPEX, taking on the revenue risk. So yeah, that's too much to ask. I don't understand why government are wary of investing in bicycles. Maybe because other operators have created such a bad example, and the visuals were in front of us, right? The internet is flooded with bicycles lying here and there. Probably, once bitten, twice shy is possibly one of the reasons. But yeah, I just don't know why there is a mental block in terms of why this model can't be evolved into a PPP model, where the government invests in the fleet and it appoints operators like us to operate it. Yeah.
I think in my view, it just goes back to what do they look at the bicycle as? If it is treated as a personal vehicle like your scooter and you are operating it for profit, they say it's a private business. If they consider, or worst case, they will say this is IPT, right? Which is independent paratransit, intermediate paratransit, which is like an auto rickshaw, right? Which is privately owned and plied, and I give you licenses and this and that, and then you are responsible. It is not strictly defined as a public transport mode. That is one reason they don't want to get inside. I have a flip case to that. I said it is not necessary that you only get into the public transport mode of owning assets. To me, these mainline modes do not come to your doorstep. Your train doesn't come to a person's doorstep. The bus doesn't come to a person's doorstep. Your revenue, you are competing today against private modes which start and end at a doorstep. Unless you go as far as you can to the person's doorstep, you are always going to be competing with two hands tied behind your back. Public transport is fighting that battle day in and day out because they can never be competitive with a private vehicle until they try to reach the doorstep. And these modes like bicycles give you that opportunity. And auto rickshaws could as well. Maybe e-bikes could as well. But these things are like you have your hand you've invested in, but you forgot the fingers. These things help you. So why don't you consider this as an extension of your public transport service? Integral to your service. You charge additionally for that, or you discount that and say, if I can use this to reach, and it's a peanut cost. I don't know. I don't think it is going to cost much for a public transport operator to buy 10,000 bicycles or 1 lakh bicycles and put it on the road, right? I mean, what will it cost? 2.5 crores, 20 crores? I don't know. What is that number? What could it be? And that's not even the cost of 10
whatever
buses.
the number be, would be a fraction of their overall expenditure on their system, right?
Exactly. And it lets you compete with the private vehicle because that's what you are asking people to do. Get out of your vehicle and come to my bus or come to my train. But you cannot reach the train to everybody's doorstep, and this provides you an opportunity. So if you invest in the CapEx and put out a net cost contract or a gross cost contract, or just do a O&M contract with operators, it does serve a lot of purpose, and it's a fraction. That word that you use, Arjit, is interesting, right? If it is a fraction, why don't you treat this as an extension of your service? And even if you do want to do a PPP, like you said, why not do fare discounting, for example? Right? You could give a 20% off on people who use the public PBS. Are they doing? Is any of the cities doing that?
No, none of them. In fact, Satya, I'll just share an example with you. In Ahmedabad, the BRTS has an unlimited pass of 750 rupees.
Okay.
We have an unlimited plan of 600 rupees. Now, individually, my bike at 600 rupees, you're not getting the communication, right? Like, it's a rental bike, 600 rupees is expensive. When you look at the BRTS, it's an unlimited pass at 750, looks very attractive, but the point is the cost of commuting from first and last mile is expensive. But when you bundle the two and you sell it as unlimited mobility across Ahmedabad for 1,350 rupees a month.
Amazing.
Now, that's a very powerful communication. And that's a very attractive product. And that's what we're trying to do here. But sadly, this is not catching the imagination of the public transport authorities. And that's the sad part.
I think this should be a call out. I think we should talk about this a little more about where we take this model, not just for you as an operator. Let's think about the whole public bicycle sharing itself. I think that is a key to the uptake of all the crores of rupees you're sinking into the metro. 500 crores, 700 crores per kilometer is what your cost of building a metro is in Delhi and Bangalore and all these kind of places. You're thinking in 700 crores per kilometer. It could vary between 5 to 6, 700. You put these things. But look at that. How many vehicles can you buy which reach? You could give a cycle to everyone who can take it to their home and come back.
Absolutely.
And yet still not even feel a pinch anywhere. I think we're missing the forest for the trees, I feel, the public transport authorities and the mainline modes. It's not just, I'm not speaking just because Arjit is over here. It works for all of these other modes which are actually being used as a last mile. And it also leads to a cultural way of, I think more people will pick up a bicycle if they start using public bicycle sharing. There's also there's a mode familiarity. Why do people pick up shared scooters? Because I know how to ride a scooter.
Yeah.
I'm using it at home, so I find one. If it's easy to pay, the friction is only the payment.
Yeah.
Right now, the friction is the bicycle and the whole form factor. And how does this thing, do I die on the roads? There's so many friction points that we are trying to address. So as civil society, some of the things we are doing, Arjit, is also to try and see how we can reduce the friction of the mode share familiarity. One of the things that we were trying to do with this pedal chalet also was to get the mode share familiarity going. This is not an alien instrument. If you get on it, you're not going to fall down and die and get in, go under a vehicle. Don't be so paranoid about this thing. Feel it. It's a friendly animal. It's your pet.
Yeah.
We have to get that familiarity going unless you go around. And I think I agree with you. So start using it for exercise. Just get used to it. So when you see it in the metro, you don't look at it like, what is this thing? I don't know. Then, of course, payment frictions and other things. But coming back to government, you think, are they even interested in this? What is the feeling you get? The transport authorities, these corporations that run these trains and buses, the city authorities who want to do these things, do they really want bicycles, or do they think, no, not now, not yet, too soon?
I mean, if I have to speak my mind, I think the intent is not there. While the center has a lot of policies in place, but when it comes down to implementation, there's a serious lack of intent. I mean, look at the cycle for India Cycles for Change campaign. As long as the campaign was live, cities were trying to do something. But as soon as the campaign ended, what's happening next? So basically, then you are doing something just because the center's policies, are asking you to do. Your own self-will is completely missing. I think there is lack of belief. And what I've also experienced is, while the bureaucracy is interested, the political will is missing.
Excellent point.
In one or few cities where the bureaucrats have really tried to go out of the way and try to push things, I don't understand why politicians look at it as a huge risk for themselves and for their vote bank. I mean, any inch of road space that you ask to carve out, I mean, as if you have asked them for their kidneys.
1.5 meters. I keep telling people your car tire also won't fit in that space. Why don't you just give it away? It's usually filled with dirt and dust anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an
Also,
interesting point. What do you hear?
Yeah, please. Sorry?
No. How was that? How have you seen these politicians react? Because I've had my own stories with them as well. But I'm interested to hear how it is in the other states that you've been to.
Honestly, Satya, I never meet politicians. I have just dealt with bureaucrats. I would like to keep a distance.
Just like all of us.
So yeah, I mean, I have no experience, barring one politician I met at the start of my journey and who gave me the go-ahead to start a pilot in Ahmedabad. I have not met a single politician otherwise. I would like to work with the bureaucrats. I would love to work within the system and try to crack this thing, because you can take help of a politician and get a one-time thing done. But unless and until it's ingrained in the policy and the structure of the corporation, that thing, your entire efforts will go wasted as soon as the politician goes. So it's better to work within the system, within the framework, to build something that lasts long. Yeah.
Ajit, have you tried pitching your Indo model to any other cities? Because there seems to be some initiative there. I mean, if you compare it to other cities, so have you tried pitching that to any other authority? So
Neerav, most of the cities who implemented PBS was because of the Smart Cities Mission program. As I said, the center did come up with a policy where it mandated cities to focus on pedestrianization and introducing public bike share, improving first and last mile connectivity. Now that mission has ended, right? And there's lack of clarity as to what next. So right now we are not really seeing any initiative coming from the cities. But honestly, if you ask me, the initiative should come from the public transport authorities. They are the biggest beneficiaries of a public bike share, because by creating and inviting a PBS system, they are enabling more people to be fed into their underutilized public transport systems. Initiative should actually come from them. And the good part about my bike is because of the subscription model, we are dependent on space only at public transit junctions, which is already under their jurisdiction. So you are not dependent on the city to at least get started in a city. Of course, once you have rolled out, then you can also tie up with the corporations, with smart cities, and try to expand your footprint at public parks or for health and leisure. But to get started, you just need to create presence along the public transit corridor.
Got it.
Let's, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying that's quite an interesting point. But so in the My Bike roadmap, as you go ahead, is pitching to public transport authorities or just working with these authorities, like what is the weightage that you would assign to just working with them? Because that, I would say that that's quite an aside for like your business operations. But then how do you value that, just working with these authorities and pitching to them in particular?
So Nirav, in case of tier 2 and tier 3 cities, more or less public transport is missing. So there the PBS becomes a public transport rather than complementing to a public transport system. So those cities, it makes sense to work with the city authorities, with corporations, right?
Sure.
But when you come to tier 1 cities, we would like to exclusively work with the public transport authorities. So like what we have done in Bombay, we are working with the MMRDA and we are right now present across Metro Line 2 and 7. We would like to work with an Indian Railways and create presence across the Western Line and the Central Line and the Harbour Line. So for tier 1 cities, it is more prudent to work with public transport authorities, and that is where we are pushing them for a PPP model, because the metros have funds. They have lots of money with them. They can definitely invest in the bicycles and they can come up with a bundled subscription which offers users complete end-to-end connectivity, starting right from their home, coming to the metro, and from metro all the way to their destination. That would be a very powerful packaging which the metros can do. We just need to catch their imagination. Yeah.
So extending that thought into the future, we have established that there is a future for public bicycle sharing. I have not bought this angle, but it is definitely something that we have to consider. There is no other way to decongest the city. And if you want to tackle any climate change goals anywhere, the transportation externalities need to be handled by bicycle, walking, public transport, and these kind of modes. And the mode share needs to be vastly larger than what it is now. And I think Arjit has helped us answer this question, that public bicycle sharing will thrive. But the question is, will it thrive in the large metro cities? Or is it too soon? Again, people almost seem to think that you have to go through certain nonsense that you do before you get into all the sensible things. I had written this article about, are we not rich enough for public transportation and cycling? I think it's a fallacy. I think a lot of people are already adopting. But what is your views? Will you succeed, Arjit, in large metro cities? Not you necessarily, we'll talk about PBS in general, including you. Do you think the other people who have ran away from this are, do you think you should, you initially said you needed more competition. Do you think you should tell them that you guys should come back and let's make this work? Don't be so afraid, you're not going to lose your pants.
Absolutely. In fact, when we were advocating for a policy in Ahmedabad, despite being a local player, we strongly protested a tender system and we advocated a permit-based system. I, in fact, reached out to a competitor and called him and said, you have to be in Ahmedabad, because the challenge in front of us is market creation, not market capturing. Tomorrow, my bike would have raised millions of dollars, and yet that would be inadequate to satisfy the demand that the market has to offer, right? So certainly we need more and more players. And one of the reasons why I'm here today with you guys is, if any of the competitors are listening, let's not, let's keep faith and let's give a second shot at public bike share. I've already shared whatever insights I could share. I would be happy to share more, but we need more players to give it a second attempt. In terms of metro city, Satya, yes, the task looks very uphill. It's an uphill task, purely because the size and scale of the challenge is so big, right? And you'd need millions of cycles to really make an impact in that kind of a city. That's one of the reasons why we are getting success in tier 2, tier 3 cities, because the ticket size is relatively smaller, and that is what we are able to invest in. So if we have to really crack tier one cities, you can't do without public-private partnership. You need large sums of capital, cheap cost of capital, almost interest-free, if I may say so.
Mm-hmm.
Pool in whatever CSR contributions, whatever climate impact investments you can to invest in that fleet, and leave it to the operators to monetize it for you. Unless and until you have that large scale investment coming into tier one cities, it would be very difficult to make an impact, and that's one of the reasons why we are not able to enter Bangalore, right? Unless and until you start with a scale and you have the backup that if demand comes, you will be able to keep feeding that demand with more and more fleet. It's difficult to crack open a large city like.
Right. No, I remember the conversation with you. You said if you put just come with 500 bikes, it'll disappear in one corner of Whitefield. You'll need about 10,000 bicycles here to begin to make a mark. But that's a very interesting way forward you mentioned. I think let's conclude this with some ideas on from you on the future of public bicycle sharing. Will this be the only model that you think will survive? Do you think the old models can come back if there is enough capital? Do you think there will be enough demand in time? What is the time range you're looking at? Do you think people can pick up? Can PBS pick up? Let's say people obviously have to pick it up. Can PBS pick up by 2028, 2030, or is it going to be longer?
In Satya, it's all a function of how quickly we can get the dedicated infra in place. I mean, if you tell me that tomorrow Bangalore is going to have an entire network of bike lanes covering the length and breadth of the city, I think it will not take more than 3-4 years to capture the entire city and get everyone to ride a bicycle. So it's really a function of how quickly you can get the prerequisites in place.
They're putting 2.5 kilometers per year. They're putting 2.5 kilometers of cycle lane a year. In 100 years, you'll get 25 kilometers or 250 kilometers. And we have 2,000 kilometers of arterial roads alone. So don't give me that math. We need people who are confident of riding on the current roads as well. It is slow enough. I don't think it is going to be all that bad. There is fast roads, high corridor roads. Again, those 2,000 kilometers of it. That's the common amount in most cities. So 2,000 into, you take the top 5 cities, that'll be around 10,000 kilometers of cycle tracks is what you need. At 1 crore a pop, you're talking about 10,000 crores. It's not too much money. That's not too much. If you add the footpaths to it, tender shore quality, that's 10 crore a pop. That's around 100,000 crore. That's good money for politicians to put some really good infrastructure. 5 cities, you can get nice, good infrastructure. Mm-hmm.
Satya, we don't even have to invest that much. In fact, this is where probably my thoughts are too radical. But to get started, we don't really need that kind of infra. All we need is a demarcation on the existing roads, okay, and a physical barrier for the safety of the cyclists, and to ensure that scooters and other vehicles can encroach upon. And more importantly, with something that I've been professing for a lot of time. You should not create bicycle lanes on the left side of the road when they are not, protected. Like when you're not investing heavily on them, let's start with the median of the road, because you're automatically by design eliminating encroachment, eliminating parking, eliminating pedestrians walking on cycle lanes because you don't have proper footpaths. You are by design eliminating a lot of problems by bringing cycle tracks on the median of the road to get started. And once you have some critical mass behind you, once you have budgets allocated for creating cycle infra, you can go back to the ideal way of having dedicated cycle tracks on the left side of the road. Yeah.
So I think you're very right about that. There are lots of options that have been tried out in Bengaluru. We saw this, we put it on the right side of the service lane and all the wrong side traffic got in. We put in these bollards on the outer ring road, and there's one more in Whitefield now, and all the wrong side vehicle users are using it. There is a cultural shift that is required. I think we'll save that conversations for another day. There is a cultural shift about how we value public property and other people's rights on the road. I think we need to go into that in a detailed way to see. You cannot keep encroaching on everybody's space, thinking it's your right on the road, right? You can't park on the footpath. You can't drive on the cycle lane. if you don't respect these basic common things as a citizen, you failed your whole country. This is where we have to go with this whole messaging. But there are lots of tactics on the urban planning side. I'll get someone on the call. Let's talk about that piece as well, the social change piece. We've been doing a lot of work, and there are experiments that are succeeding to a small extent, but we need them in volumes. Like you said, if there are barricades, we need like 100 kilometers of barricades. And then go for hell and make sure that it works and get people used to having it and not riding on it and not misusing it. There's no other way you can put this thing down other than make it a taboo to foil these things. But I see a good future. Thanks, Sarjit, for coming on our show, and it has been extremely enlightening. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think we have a bright future ahead of us. It may take a little longer than we thought, but stay the course. And good luck to everything you do.
Thanks, Satya. Thanks, Neerav. Truly enjoyed the session, and yeah, I hope there are more players who get inspired and who join this difficult battle. But I'm sure the success is going to be there. It's just a matter of time. Yeah.